I was 26 when I started working at a small seafood place by the river. It wasn't a big chain or anything fancy, but it tried to look upscale: dark wood floors, candles on every table, a big glass window with a view of the river. I worked nights, mostly the late shifts that ended near midnight. The restaurant sat in a quiet part of the city, so business slowed down heavy after 10. On weeknights, we would sometimes have no more than 5 customers for the last 2 hours. That meant long stretches of silence, just me, a cook in the back, and the hum of the fridges. It wasn't a bad job, though. I liked the water. I liked walking outside and smelling the river air on breaks. One night in late fall, a man came in around 11:30. He was alone. He wore a clean gray coat and glasses. He didn't look rough or out of place, more like someone stopping in after work. He asked for a table near the back. I seated him and brought water. He smiled but didn't talk much. When I asked if he needed time with the menu, he said, "No, just the grilled salmon, please." His voice was steady, polite. He thanked me. While he waited, he sat very straight. He didn't check his phone. He didn't look around the restaurant much either. I figured he was tired. When I set down his plate, he introduced himself casually, said his name was Daniel. I nodded, gave him a polite smile, and left him to eat. He didn't linger after finishing. He paid cash, left a decent tip, and told me to have a good night. That was it. I didn't think twice about him. By closing time, it was just me and the cook. We had our usual routine: wipe down, count the drawer, lock up. I clocked out around 12:30, stuffed my apron in my bag, and stepped outside into the cool air. To get to the bus stop, I usually walked along the street. But sometimes, if I wanted to cut a few minutes, I went through the alley behind the restaurant. It was narrow, lined with dumpsters, but it came out close to the main road where the buses ran. That night, I was tired. I chose the alley. I was halfway through when I heard it. Footsteps. I slowed, thinking maybe it was just someone heading the same way. But the steps matched mine. When I paused, they paused. My chest tightened. I looked back over my shoulder. At first, I didn't see anyone. The alley had a few broken lamps, so most of it was shadows. Then I caught movement, a figure at the far end keeping pace. I walked faster. My shoes hit the pavement too loud, too quick, and the echo of the other steps grew sharper. Whoever it was, they weren't trying to stay hidden anymore. At the next side door, I turned sharp and slipped into the delivery corridor that cut behind the kitchen. The door was always propped open for late-night trash runs. I pressed myself against the wall and held my breath. I noticed the footsteps stop. For a moment, the alley was silent. I thought maybe whoever it was had passed by. Then I saw him. He stood just at the entrance of the corridor, not moving, not saying anything, just standing in the dark where the streetlight didn't reach. A cold feeling washed over me. It was Daniel, the man who'd eaten salmon an hour earlier. I recognized the gray coat, the glasses glinting faintly. His hand was down at his side, holding something small, dark. At first, I couldn't tell what it was. My eyes adjusted slowly, but the shape looked too rigid to be a phone or wallet. It looked like a gun. I backed up into the corridor, trying not to make sound. I wanted to run, but I knew the exit was behind him. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. I whispered fast into the receiver, told the operator I was by the river restaurant, that a man was following me, that I thought he had a weapon. I gave them the street name, the back alley. The operator told me to stay hidden and stay on the line. I risked another glance. Daniel was still there, half in shadow. He tilted his head, almost like he was listening. Then slowly, he turned and walked back down the alley the way he had come. I didn't move until I saw the red and blue lights flash against the brick walls. 2 officers met me in the corridor. I explained everything, about the footsteps, about Daniel, about the object in his hand. They searched the alley but didn't find him. They drove me home that night, and I felt relief when I closed my apartment door behind me. The next day, detectives came to the restaurant to pull footage. We had cameras on the front entrance, the dining room, and the kitchen doors. They wanted to see Daniel. We pulled the video from the night before. I pointed him out, the coat, the glasses, the way he sat at the table in the back. But when they ran it back, there was nothing. No footage of him at all. Even the cash drawer shows no record. I watched with my own eyes and felt cold run through me. I had talked to him. I had seen him eat. Yet the cameras showed nothing. The police told me they couldn't confirm anything without evidence. They filed a report, but said there wasn't much else to do. I kept working for another week, but every night I felt the same chill on my walk home. Every sound behind me made me think of footsteps. Every shadow looked like him. Finally, I quit. I told my boss it wasn't worth it. It's been months now, and I haven't gone back near that part of the river since. I'm a 19-year-old girl, and I had been looking forward to this weekend for months. Work had been relentless, and I wanted nothing more than quiet, fresh air, and maybe a few long hikes. So when I found a small cabin listed just outside a mountain town, I booked it right away. I arrived late Friday morning. The cabin was exactly what I expected: wooden walls, a porch that looked out into tall pines, and not much else around it. The town itself was small but welcoming, with a main street lined with cafes, shops, and a couple of bars. Most of the day I spent exploring. I walked through the town, checked out a few trails, and picked up groceries for the weekend. By the time the sun dipped behind the mountains, I was starving. I decided I'd treat myself to dinner before heading back to the cabin. At the far edge of town, I found a small, family-owned restaurant. It was dimly lit, with only a handful of tables filled. The place had the sort of quiet comfort you'd expect in a town like this. I sat in a booth near the window and ordered a simple meal: roast chicken and vegetables. While I waited, I scrolled through my phone, looking at trail maps for the next day. That's when I noticed the older man. He was seated in the booth across the aisle, alone, his gray hair thinning at the top. He had a half-finished plate in front of him and a coffee cup he kept refilling. At first, I didn't think much of it, but then he spoke. "Good hiking weather today," he said, glancing at me. I gave a polite nod. "Yeah, it was perfect. You go up to the ridge? Most tourists start there." I shook my head. "Not today. Just walked around town." He smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Plenty of time tomorrow then." The waiter brought my food, and I focused on eating. But the man kept talking. At first, it was harmless. He asked about the weather, where I was from, what brought me to town. Then the questions started to feel different. "Where are you staying?" he asked. I hesitated. "Just a place outside town." "Cabin," he said quickly. "Something like that. You here alone?" I pushed a piece of chicken around my plate and forced a smile. "Meeting a friend tomorrow." It wasn't true, but I didn't care. Something about the way he looked at me made my skin crawl. He asked, "When you leaving?" I set my fork down. "Not sure yet." He chuckled softly. "Plenty of time then." I didn't answer. I finished eating as fast as I could and asked for the check. When I got up to leave, he lifted his cup and gave me a slow nod. I walked out without another word. The night air was cool and still. My car was parked down the street, and as I unlocked it, I looked back toward the restaurant window. The man was still in his booth, watching. I drove toward the cabin, the road winding through tall trees and long stretches of dark. Halfway there, I noticed headlights in my rearview mirror. At first, I thought nothing of it. It was a public road, but the car stayed behind me, matching every turn, every bend. I slowed down, pretending to check my GPS. The headlights slowed too. A chill spread through me. At the next fork in the road, I turned down a smaller lane that looped around the forest. My heart pounded as I glanced back. For a moment, I thought I'd lost them. But then, around the curve, the headlights appeared again. I sped up, hands tight on the wheel. The lane narrowed, and I knew it circled back to the main road. If I timed it right, maybe I could lose them. I cut my headlights for a stretch and turned sharply onto another road. I waited, breath held. This time, the other car didn't follow. When I reached the cabin, I parked close to the porch and sat in the silence, staring at the trees. No lights, no movement. Still, I locked the door behind me. The cabin felt different now, less like a retreat and more like a trap. But I tried to brush it off. I told myself it could have been anyone on the road. Maybe I was just being paranoid. I showered, letting the hot water run longer than usual, trying to calm down. When I stepped out, wrapped in a towel, I felt better, safer, until I saw the door. It was open, just slightly, wide enough for a shadow to slip through. I remembered locking it. I scanned the floor. Across the wooden boards were faint boot prints, leading from the door into the cabin. My hands shook. I backed into the bedroom, slammed the door shut, and turned the lock. I pushed a chair under the handle and grabbed my phone. The operator on the other end was calm. I wasn't. My voice shook as I explained there was someone in my cabin. She told me to stay where I was. Officers were on their way. Every creak of the floorboards outside made me freeze. I could hear the faintest sounds, like someone moving slowly, carefully. The wait felt endless. But eventually, red and blue lights flashed across the trees outside. I heard voices calling out. Heavy boots thudded against the porch. Then silence. Minutes later, a knock at the bedroom door. Police. It's safe now. I opened it cautiously. 2 officers stood in the living room. One spoke directly. We found him. They led me outside. At the back of the cabin, near the crawlspace opening, they had a man in handcuffs. His face was half hidden in the dark, but I didn't need a clear look. I knew it was him, the man from the restaurant. The officers told me he'd been hiding under the floorboards. I couldn't breathe for a moment. All I could think was how close he had been, how easily he could have stepped out while I was sleeping. They took him away. I didn't sleep that night. I packed my things and drove out of town the moment the sun rose. I never went back, and I never will. My name is Iris, I'm 21 years old, and I've worked at the same small restaurant in the city for almost a year now. I only do late shifts since I'm in school during the day. Usually nights are slow. Sometimes we'll have a few couples or families come in before closing, but after 9, it's just me wiping down tables and waiting for time to pass. This night was different. The storm had been going since late afternoon. Heavy rain, strong wind, thunder every couple of minutes. The streets outside were practically empty, so I thought the restaurant would stay quiet. Around 8, I was finishing up a pot of coffee when the front door opened. A man and a woman stepped inside. Both were dripping wet, like they had been walking in the storm instead of driving. The man looked to be in his 40s, tall and thin with sharp shoulders and messy dark hair plastered to his forehead. The woman was younger, maybe late 20s, with pale skin and soaked clothes clinging to her. They both looked at me the moment they entered, like they were studying me before even sitting down. "Would you like a table for 2?" I asked. The man just nodded, and I led them to a booth by the window. Rain was running down the glass outside. They took forever to decide on their food. When I came back for the 3rd time, the woman whispered something in the man's ear before he finally ordered for both of them. The whole time, their eyes kept flicking toward me. Not in the normal way customers sometimes glance at a server, but as if I was the only thing in the room worth watching. I tried to act normal. I refilled their water. I asked if they wanted coffee. The man did most of the talking. The woman barely said anything. Their voices stayed low, like every word was a secret. When I wasn't at their table, I could feel them staring. Every time I turned around, one of them was looking right at me. By the time they finished eating, my nerves were shot. They left cash on the table, slipped out into the storm, and vanished into the night like they'd never been there at all. I thought that was the end of it. Closing came around 11. The storm was still raging, rain hammering against the windows, thunder shaking the glass. The cook had already left, and the manager had gone home hours earlier, leaving me to lock up. I was sweeping near the back when I heard it pounding. Not at the front door, at the delivery entrance. The pounding was frantic, quick and heavy, mixed with a voice calling out, "Please let me in, I need help." I froze. It was a woman's voice. I set the broom down and walked toward the back door, heart racing. The pounding got louder as I approached. When I reached the door, I saw her through the glass window in the frame. A woman, soaked to the bone, hood up, hair sticking to her face. She was shivering, fists slamming against the glass. "Please, I just need to come inside. Just for a second." Even through the rain and the shadows, I recognized her. It was the same woman who had been in here earlier. The one whispering in the booth. I didn't unlock the door. Something about the way she kept glancing behind her set every alarm off in my head. Her eyes darted past me to the street, then back again. "What's wrong?" I asked through the door. "There's a man," she said, her voice shaking. "He's following me. Please let me in before he..." She cut herself off. Her eyes went wide. I turned and looked through the rain-smeared glass of the side window. A tall figure was coming down the alley. Shoulders hunched, moving slowly, head tilted. Even through the storm, I knew who it was. The man from earlier. He was walking straight toward us. The woman started pounding again, harder this time. "Please open." "He's right there," but I saw it in her face, in the way she didn't look scared enough, in the way her eyes flicked toward me instead of him. It wasn't real panic. It was something else. A trap. I grabbed the handle, pulled the door tight, and locked the deadbolt. Her expression shifted the moment she heard the click. She stopped begging. She just stared at me through the glass, face blank, while the man kept coming closer through the rain. I backed away fast, pulled my phone from my apron, and dialed 911. My hands shook so much I almost dropped it. I ducked behind the counter, keeping low, whispering to the operator about the man and woman at the back door. She told me to stay inside, stay hidden, and officers were on their way. For the next 10 minutes, I sat there in the dark, every muscle tense. I could hear the storm outside, the rain slamming against the building, but nothing else. No more pounding, no voices, just silence. When the police finally arrived, their lights flashed against the walls of the restaurant. I unlocked the front door and let them in, heart still racing. They checked the alley, but of course, both of them were gone. Just wet pavement and falling rain. I explained everything, the dinner earlier, the way they watched me, the woman showing up later, the man following behind her. One of the officers nodded slowly, said it was good I didn't open the door. They advised me not to stay alone that night and suggested I call a friend or family. I didn't argue. I clocked out, grabbed my bag, and went to stay at a friend's apartment across town. The next morning, when I came back to open the restaurant, I walked around to the delivery door to grab the first shipment of produce. That's when I saw it. Written in thick, black marker, scrawled across the metal of the door, "See you next time." The letters were crooked, dripping like the ink had run in the rain. My stomach turned cold. I didn't go back inside. I called the manager, told him everything, and quit on the spot. That same week, I packed up my things and moved out of my apartment. For a while, I stayed with family in another part of the city, anywhere that felt far enough away from that alley, that restaurant, and those two faces. It's been months now, and I still think about it every time I walk past a restaurant or hear someone pounding on a door. I haven't worked a night shift since, and I never will again. My name is Sophie. I was 19 when I started working part-time at a little family-owned restaurant in town. It wasn't anything fancy, but people liked it for the home-cooked meals and the quiet atmosphere. The owners were kind, the shifts weren't too long, and it gave me some extra money while I was in school. Most of my shifts were afternoons that stretched into evenings. By the time I was clocking out, the town would already be settling down. It wasn't a loud place, not much traffic, just the occasional car rolling through. One slow afternoon, a man came in to pick up a large takeout order. He looked to be in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. His hair was messy, his clothes wrinkled, and he couldn't seem to stand still. His hands shook slightly when he pulled out his wallet. When the food was packed up, I noticed he was struggling to juggle all the bags. Out of habit, I asked if he wanted help carrying them out. He gave me a strange smile but nodded. As we walked toward his car, I noticed he kept glancing back at me over his shoulder. Not the casual kind of glance, but a long, fixed stare. His eyes didn't leave me until he was sliding into the driver's seat. I gave a quick wave and hurried back inside. The rest of the afternoon went on like normal. But later that evening, when the sun had set and I was wiping down tables, I saw him again. He was sitting near the window, alone, no food in front of him. Just sitting there watching. The dining room was quiet, and every time I passed by, I felt his eyes follow me. Just sat in that chair while I cleaned. I tried to shake it off, but something about it didn't sit right with me. I felt uneasy the whole time. When my shift finally ended, I clocked out, grabbed my bag, and told myself it was nothing. The road home was mostly empty. I usually took the back route. It was quicker and cut along the river. That night, the air was cold and the road was darker than usual. That's when it happened. The car jolted hard, the wheel pulling sharp to the right. I managed to slow and pull off to the side, heart pounding. When I stepped out, I saw the rear tire had blown flat. I cursed under my breath. I'd never changed a tire on my own before. Before I could even think about calling roadside assistance, headlights flared in my rearview mirror. They grew closer, then stopped right behind me. The shape of the car made my stomach drop. It was the same car from earlier, the one the man with the takeout had driven. The driver's door opened, and there he was. It was the same man, coming toward me with his hands in his pockets. He gave me a smile that didn't look right in the dim light. "Looks like you've got trouble," he said. His voice was calm but low. I nodded stiffly. "I already called someone to help. I'll be fine." That was a lie, but I wasn't about to tell him I was stranded. He took a step closer. "I can fix it for you. Won't take long." Something in me screamed not to trust him. I kept the car door cracked open and pulled my phone out as quietly as I could. With one hand, I pressed 911 and held the phone low against my leg. The operator answered, and I whispered fast, trying to keep my voice steady. "Flat tire on River Road. A man's here. He's making me uncomfortable. Please send someone." The man must have noticed. His face shifted, the smile gone. In 2 quick strides, he was at my side. His hand clamped down on my arm, so tight it made me stumble. "Come on," he muttered, dragging me toward his car. I screamed, but his grip only tightened. He snatched the phone out of my other hand before I could react. With a sharp flick of his arm, he hurled it into the dark river just beyond the guardrail. I heard the faint splash, then nothing. I twisted, kicked, tried to pull free, but his strength was crushing. My heart slammed against my ribs as he yanked me closer to the open passenger door of his car. That's when sirens filled the road. Red and blue lights filled the road, washing over us both. The man froze for half a second, then let go of me, backing up as two police cars skidded to a stop. Officers jumped out, shouting commands. Within seconds, they had him pinned to the ground, hands cuffed behind his back. I stood shaking by my car, barely able to breathe. One of the officers guided me back, asking if I was hurt. I shook my head, though my arm throbbed where his fingers had dug in. Another officer checked my tire. They replaced it for me right there, talking calmly the whole time, making sure I was steady enough to drive home. I don't remember much of what they said after. My head was spinning, the image of his stare burned into my mind, the feeling of his hand dragging me still clinging to my skin. The next morning, I went to the restaurant and told the owners I couldn't keep working there. I didn't explain all the details. I didn't want to remember it again. They looked worried but didn't ask for more. I handed over my apron and walked out. I haven't been back since. Even now, months later, every time I drive past the river, I can't stop thinking about how close it was. How quickly an ordinary shift at work turned into the scariest night of my life. It was the winter holidays, and the city felt strangely quiet. Most people had left to visit family, but I stayed behind. I didn't want to waste the break doing nothing, so I looked for a part-time job. After about a week of searching, I got a call from a restaurant a few blocks away. They needed extra staff for the holiday season. I didn't hesitate. The place was small but upscale, tucked neatly into a side street. From the outside, it looked warm and inviting, the kind of spot locals kept to themselves. Inside, the lighting was soft, the tables were covered in white cloths, and the atmosphere was calm. I didn't mind the long shifts. The tips were good, and the work kept me busy. Most nights went by without much excitement. A handful of couples, a few families, sometimes business dinners that carried on late. But there was one man I noticed often. He usually sat near the bar, nursing a glass of wine, barely speaking to the waiters. He was there again on the night it happened. It was close to midnight when the last guests left. I wiped down the tables while the kitchen staff packed up. The man at the bar was the last one remaining. He sat hunched over his glass, staring at no one in particular. The manager asked him politely if he needed anything else. He just shook his head and left a bill on the counter. By the time I finished cleaning and stepped outside, the street was empty again. I pulled my coat tighter. The air was sharp and cold. My apartment was only a short walk away, and I preferred to walk home rather than waste money on a taxi. The streets were quiet, only the sound of my boots crunching against thin patches of ice. I turned down the first corner and kept my head low against the wind. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. I slowed for a second, then sped up again. The footsteps matched my pace. I looked back. At the far end of the street, under the glow of a dim lamp, was the same man from the bar. I told myself it was a coincidence. He might live in the same direction. Still, I walked faster. When I turned onto a narrower street, I hoped he would continue straight. But he turned too. The sound of his steps grew closer. I felt my pulse quicken as I passed shuttered shops and darkened windows. The street grew quieter, emptier, until finally I reached the alley that cut toward my block. Normally, I avoided it, but that night I just wanted to get home fast. Halfway through, the air felt heavier. The man's footsteps were louder now, almost right behind me. I turned around. He stood only a few feet away, blocking the path. His face was expressionless, his eyes fixed on me. "Give me your bag," he said. His voice was low and steady. My throat went dry. I glanced toward the end of the alley, just a stretch of cold pavement away, but his stance made it clear I wouldn't get past him easily. He said, "Give it now," stepping closer. I froze. My bag wasn't worth much, just my wallet, a phone, some spare clothes. But something in his tone told me it wouldn't end with him taking it. I felt the panic rising in my chest. My eyes darted around, searching for anything I could use. That's when I saw it, a loose metal signpost lying near the wall, half buried in snow. I didn't think. I just grabbed it. As he reached for me, I swung hard. The metal clanged against his arm, the sound echoing through the alley. He let out a sharp grunt and stumbled back, his face twisting with anger. I didn't wait. I dropped the sign and ran, my legs moving before I could even feel the ground beneath me. The cold air tore at my lungs as I sprinted out of the alley and back onto the main street. I didn't look back. Not once. By the time I reached my apartment door, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely fit the key into the lock. I stumbled inside, slammed the door shut, and collapsed against it. I sat there for a long time, listening, waiting to hear footsteps outside, but none came. The silence of the apartment was almost too much to bear. The next morning, I called the restaurant and told the manager I couldn't come back. He didn't press me for details, and I was grateful. I knew I wouldn't step foot near that place again. I was unharmed, but I couldn't shake the thought of how close it had been. If I hadn't seen that signpost, if I had hesitated even for a second, I might not have made it out of that alley.